let me ask you something. Has anyone ever laughed at your dream? Not a small chuckle, not a gentle smile of doubt, but a real laugh. The kind that fills a room, the kind that makes other people join in, the kind that follows you home and sits in the corner of your bedroom while you try to sleep. Has someone you loved looked at the thing you wanted most in the world and laughed at it like it was the funniest joke they had ever heard? Because that happened to me, in my own home, at my own dinner table, with the people who were supposed to believe in me more than anyone else on earth. My name is Alex. I am 34 years old. I grew up in a small town where big dreams were treated like symptoms of a disease, where ambition was something to be embarrassed about, where the safest thing you could do was want exactly what everyone around you had and nothing more. I wanted more, and my family made sure I knew exactly what they thought about that. For 15 years, they laughed, they doubted, they predicted my failure with the casual confidence of people who had never tried anything themselves. And then, one evening, a news alert popped up on 37 phones in my family's group chat, with my name on it. I wish I could have seen every single face in that moment. Stay with me, because this story starts in a small kitchen with people laughing at a 17-year-old kid with a notebook full of dreams, and it ends in a way that nobody in that kitchen could have ever predicted. I grew up in Millfield, population 6,000, the kind of town where everyone knows your name, your parents, your grandparents, and exactly how much money your family has or doesn't have. My family was working class. My dad drove a delivery truck for 22 years. My mom worked at the grocery store checkout for 18 years. My Uncle Ray owned a small auto repair shop. My Aunt Carol was a school secretary. My cousins worked at the factory on the edge of town that made metal components for larger companies nobody in Millfield had ever heard of. They were good people, honest, hardworking, deeply good people. But they were also people who had learned to keep their heads down, people who had grown up being told that the world beyond Millfield was for other people, people with money, people with connections, people who were born into the right families, not people like us. That belief was in the air we breathed in our house. It wasn't spoken outright, it was just assumed, built into every conversation, every decision, every quiet look exchanged when someone suggested something that seemed too big. I was different from the time I was small. I read constantly, books from the library, magazines I found at garage sales, anything I could get my hands on. I was fascinated by business, by technology, by the way ideas could turn into things that changed how people lived. At 12 years old, I started a small business selling handmade bookmarks at school. I made $40 in 1 week. I was more excited about the process than the money, about making something, offering it, and watching people want it. At 14, I started a blog about technology. This was before everyone had a blog, before it was cool. I wrote about gadgets and apps and where I thought the internet was heading. I had 300 readers within 6 months. At 16, I taught myself basic coding from library books and YouTube videos. I built a simple app for organizing school assignments. My friends used it, then their friends used it, then students at other schools started downloading it. My guidance counselor called my parents in. She showed them the download numbers. She said, "Alex has something real here. This is genuinely impressive." My parents nodded politely. On the way home, my dad said, "That's nice, son, but you need a backup plan, something real." I told myself they just didn't understand yet. Then came the dinner that changed everything. I was 17 years old. It was a Sunday. Family dinner at our house, the whole crew. My parents, my Uncle Ray and Aunt Carol, my cousins Derek and Stephanie, and my grandparents on my dad's side. 9 people around a table that barely fit 9 people. My grandmother had made her pot roast, my uncle was telling a story about a car he fixed, my cousins were arguing about something on television. I don't know what made me do it that night. Maybe it was the blog numbers I'd checked the morning. Maybe it was the email I'd gotten from a developer who wanted to talk about my app. Maybe I just needed someone to be excited with me. I waited for a gap in the conversation. Then I said, I've been thinking about what I want to do after graduation. I want to move to the city, and I want to build a tech company. I think I can create something that could actually be big. The table went quiet. Then my Uncle Ray laughed. It started small, just a short exhale of disbelief. But then it grew. He said, "A tech company? Okay, Bill Gates, sure." My cousin Derek joined in. "Yeah, right, you and what investors?" My Aunt Carol smiled the way adults smile when they're trying to be kind but can't hide what they actually think. "Honey, those companies are started by people with degrees from fancy schools and family money. That's not us." My dad stared at his plate. My mom said quietly, "We just want you to be realistic, Alex." And my grandfather, the man whose opinion I valued more than almost anyone's, said 7 words that I carried with me for 15 years. "Boy, you need to know your place." The table moved on. Someone changed the subject. The pot roast was passed around again. My cousins started talking about the factory. And I sat there, 17 years old, with my dream being laughed at by the people who were supposed to protect it. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just made a quiet, absolute decision. I was going to prove every single one of them wrong. Not to hurt them, not out of anger, but because the only way to answer a laugh like that is with undeniable evidence. I need to tell you about the next 15 years, because they were not glamorous. They were not a movie montage of quick wins and lucky breaks. They were hard. Really, genuinely, relentlessly hard. I graduated from high school and took out student loans to attend a state university 3 hours from Millfield. I studied computer science and business. I worked 2 jobs to cover living expenses. I slept 6 hours a night for 4 years. My family called occasionally. When they asked how it was going, I said, fine. I stopped talking about my dreams with them. I had learned that lesson at 17. After graduation, I moved to the city with $4,000 in savings and a laptop that overheated if I ran too many programs. I got a job at a small software company doing entry-level development work. I wasn't building my dream yet. I was learning everything I could as fast as I could while working on my own projects at night and on weekends. At 25, I built my first real product, a project management tool for small businesses that couldn't afford expensive enterprise software. I launched it quietly, with no marketing budget, just to post on a developer forum and word of mouth. 300 businesses signed up in the first month. I quit my job. My mother called when I told her and said, "Alex, please be careful. You have a good, stable job. Don't throw it away." I said, "Mom, I know what I'm doing." I was terrified, but I knew. The next 2 years were the hardest of my entire life. I burned through my savings. I had months where I ate rice and beans for 2 weeks straight. I had a period of 4 months where I genuinely didn't know if I was going to make it. There were nights when I thought about my grandfather's words, "Know your place." Maybe this was my place after all. Maybe Millfield was right about me. But then I'd open my laptop and look at the numbers. The businesses using my product, the reviews they were leaving, the problems I was solving were for real people. And I'd keep going. At 28, I brought in my first investor, a small amount by industry standards, but enough to hire 2 developers and a part-time marketing person. The product grew. I refined it. I listened to every piece of customer feedback obsessively. I rebuilt features that weren't working. I added things nobody had thought to ask for but couldn't imagine living without once they had them. At 30, we crossed 1 million in annual revenue. At 32, we crossed 10 million. At 33, we were acquired by a major technology company in a deal that I cannot share all the details of publicly. But I can tell you this. The number had 7 digits, and I had not forgotten a single face at that dinner table. I want to tell you exactly how my family found out. I had not been hiding my success, but I also had not been broadcasting it to Millfield. My relationship with my family over 15 years had been polite and surface level. Holiday calls, occasional visits, conversations about the weather and local gossip that never went very deep. They knew I had a software company. They knew I worked in tech, but the specifics, the numbers, the scope of what I had built, I had never shared those with them. Partly because they had never asked, and partly because I was waiting. For what? I didn't know exactly. I just knew I would know it when it arrived. When the acquisition deal closed, my company's PR team drafted a press release. It went to several major technology publications. The story was picked up by the business section of a national newspaper. And that newspaper had a news alert app, an app that millions of people had downloaded, an app that sent push notifications when stories matched your interests. Business news, local success stories, technology acquisitions. Several of my family members had that app. My cousin Derek used it for stock tips. My Aunt Carol had downloaded it because her church group talked about current events. My Uncle Ray had it because his son had installed it on his phone for him. I found out later exactly what happened. It was a Tuesday evening. Most of my family was in the family group chat, the one I was technically a member of but rarely engaged with. At 7:14 p.m., Derek sent a message to the group chat. He wrote, "Wait, is this our Alex?" He attached a screenshot of the news alert. The headline read, "Local man's tech company acquired in major deal. Alex from Millfield makes good." The article talked about my company, my background, and where I'd grown up. It mentioned Millfield by name. It mentioned my parents. My phone started buzzing at 7:15 p.m. Messages are flooding into the group chat. "Oh my God, is this real? Alex, is this you?" I watched the messages come in from my apartment in the city. I was sitting on my couch, my laptop open, a cup of tea cooling on the coffee table. I felt something complicated. Not triumphant exactly, not angry, just very, very quiet inside. Then my Uncle Ray called. Ray, who had laughed first that Sunday at the dinner table 17 years ago. Ray, who had said, "Okay, Bill Gates." I let it ring twice. Then I answered. "Alex." His voice was strange, thick, unsteady. "Hey, Uncle Ray." Long silence. "I just saw the news." "Yeah." Another silence. Then he said, "Is it true? All of it?" "Yes." He made a sound I had never heard from him before, something between a laugh and something else entirely, something that wasn't a laugh at all. He said, "Alex, I owe you an apology. That dinner, when you told me what you wanted, I laughed at you. I was the first one to laugh, and I've thought about that more than you know over the years. I want you to know I'm sorry. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you." I sat very still in my apartment. Then I said, "Thank you, Ray. That means a lot." He said, "You knew your place all along. You just knew it was bigger than we could see." I had to put the phone down for a moment after that. My uncle called an hour later. He was 81 years old. His voice was slower now, quieter with age. He said, "I told you to know your place. I regretted saying that ever since. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid you'd leave and never come back. Afraid you'd outgrow what we thought was possible. And you did leave, and you did outgrow what we thought was possible, but you didn't leave us. And that's more than I deserved." I cried on that phone call. Not because I had won, but because I finally understood something. The people who laughed that night weren't cruel. They were afraid. Afraid of hope. Afraid of wanting too much. afraid of the pain of failure, so they killed the dream before it could die on its own. They were wrong, but they were human, and understanding that was more satisfying than any victory could have been. 3 months after the news alert, I drove back to Millfield. Not for a triumphant return, not for an "I told you so" moment. I went back because my grandmother asked me to come for Sunday dinner. The same table, the same house, the same pot roast, but a completely different energy in that room. My Uncle Ray shook my hand for a long time before he let go. My Aunt Carol cried when she hugged me. My cousin Derek, who said "you and what investors" stood in the kitchen with me, said, "Man, I should have believed you. I always knew you were different. I just didn't know what different meant." My dad sat next to me at dinner. He was quieter than everyone else. Halfway through the meal, he put his hand on my shoulder and kept it there for a moment without saying anything. Then he said, "I should have stood up for your dream that night. I heard Ray laugh, and I just sat there. I've never forgiven myself." I looked at my dad, this man who had driven a delivery truck for 22 years, who had worked himself to the bone every single week to keep our family fed, housed, and warm. I said, "Dad, you taught me how to work. You showed me what it looks like to show up every single day, even when it's hard. That's nothing. That's everything." He nodded, but he couldn't speak. After dinner, my grandfather asked me to sit with him on the porch. We sat in the old chairs he'd had for 30 years, looking out at the same street I'd grown up on. He said, "Tell me about the company. Tell me what you built." So I told him everything, from the first bookmark business at 12 to the acquisition. Every failure, every breakthrough, every sleepless night. He listened to every single word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know what the difference is between you and the rest of us?" I waited. He said, "We saw the walls and stopped. You saw the walls and figured out how to go through them anyway." He looked at me. He said, "I'm glad you didn't listen to me." That sentence from my grandfather, the man whose words had lodged in me at 17 like a splinter, was the one I had been waiting for my whole life to hear. Not the money, not the acquisition, not the news alert. That sentence. I drove home to the city that evening with the windows down and the radio off, just thinking. I thought about the 17-year-old at that dinner table with his heart in his throat and a room of laughter closing in around him. I wanted to go back and sit next to that kid, put my hand on his shoulder the way my dad had put his on mine, and tell him, "Keep going. Every wall has a way through, and the people laughing right now will be the same people cheering the loudest one day. Just keep going." I am going to say something that might surprise you. I am not glad my family laughed at my dream. I am not grateful for the doubt or the dismissal or the 7 words my grandfather said that night. I did not need those things to succeed. I would have worked just as hard, wanted it just as much, built something just as real if every person at that table had stood up and cheered for me. The pain was not the point. The struggle was not the gift. The dream was always the gift. But I will say this, if you are sitting at a table right now where someone is laughing at what you want, if you're in a room where your vision is being treated as a joke, if someone whose opinion matters to you has looked at your most honest desire and dismissed it with a smile, I want you to do one thing. Write it down. Whatever it is, the dream, the plan, the thing you want more than anything. Write it down somewhere private and safe, and then go build it in the quiet, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Because here is what I know after 34 years on this earth. The people who laugh at your dream are not your enemies. Most of the time, they are just people who stopped dreaming and forgot what it felt like to want something badly enough